Good evening and welcome to the Township of Chatham Township Committee meeting for Thursday, February 2nd, 2017. Greg, has adequate notice been given?
Yes, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was given as required by the Open Public Meetings Act as follows. Notice was given to both the Chatham Courier and the Morris County Daily Record on January 6, 2017. Notice was posted on the bulletin board in the main hallway of the municipal building on January 6, 2017. And notice was filed with the Township Clerk on January 6, 2017.
Thank you. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Howard is absent. Mr. Kelly?
Here.
Mr. Sullivan?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Here.
Mayor Ritter?
Here. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to reports. Mike, you want to kick us off?
No reports tonight, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Kevin?
Joint Court met. Chatham Township is the chair of the Joint Court this year, and all things are operating smoothly. It is still one of the finest shared services in the state and an example for many other towns who are looking to emulate it.
Great, thank you. Karen?
Well, actually, it's been a little bit busy around town. First of all, we would like to congratulate our senior center on a most successful donor appreciation party on Sunday. There were about 130 in attendance at their open house, and it was a great event. Some 80% of the funding for our terrific senior center comes from foundation grants and private donations, and they do a great job. They provide a lot of different services to the seniors of our community. And to segue into something I touched on the last time, the GoGo Grandparent app was made note of in some of our local media during the last couple of days from Tri-Town 55 Plus. It looks like the pilot is going to start sometime around the spring. In April, they're looking at a $3 to $5 maximum charge per ride. It's an app similar to Uber, which does not require a smartphone. And the cost of each ride of about 87 cents per mile is going to be picked up by the Tri-Town 55 Plus Foundation with grants, etc. So that is actually a wonderful thing, since most of our surveys come back saying that transportation for our seniors is a great concern. We have the MAPS bus, of course, the senior bus, which runs during the daytime, but the GoGo Grandparents app is actually more of a 24/7 thing. So we look forward to hearing more about it. It's going to be a pilot program once again. That sounds like it'll be kicked off around April. Also, our senior community will be happy to know that our Department of Public Works is putting a great effort into getting the lights in the lower parking lot up and running. They've been inoperable for a number of months, if not years, and as the days are short, sometimes the afternoons turn into twilight and the lower lot is not as well lit as they would like. So thanks to our Department of Public Works taking matters into their own hands as usual, they're going to do whatever they can to get that lower lot lit. Additionally, our Department of Public Works is working hard around town, doing a lot of indoor projects. They've been painting around Town Hall. They're also doing some painting of our Colony Pool Club furniture. They're working on our roads and trees and potholes and you name it. Anybody with a local issue, a local street issue, is always urged to call in to our Department of Public Works with any of their concerns. Our, along our utility line, the project for the Lafayette Avenue water main replacement continues to chug along. They're going to have their pre-construction meeting in the week of February 13th, and notices will be sent around to all neighbors impacted by the water main replacement work on Lafayette Avenue. They'll be starting, if all goes according to their initial plans, they'll be starting the weekend of the 17th at Lenape Trail and working their way south to cover the 1,000 yards that immediately impact Lafayette Avenue School and Chatham High School, and work towards getting that completed during winter break. The last thing we have going on in our communications area is that, first of all, we're looking towards National Wear Red Day tomorrow as we kick off February, Heart Awareness Month, American Heart Association. And we urge you from the Mayor's Wellness Campaign, Your Honor, as well as organizations around the nation to take greater care of your heart and get a little bit more exercise. The days are getting a little bit longer. Walk around the block a little bit, maybe on your way to the deli. Walk around the corner first. Take the stairs if you can. A modicum of extra exercise can go a long way. Our next production of Perspectives in the Township with our able-bodied Tom Salvis at the helm will be bringing greater attention to our wonderful Senior Services Center of the Chathams. They did a lot of work at our donors party, and we look forward to the final production. So sorry for the long-winded explanation of what's going on in my area. I took enough oxygen for the room. So
Great.
thanks.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay.
Just two quick items. One, the Board of Health met this past week, reorganization meeting. Everything's going well on that end. Learned from Greg that Chatham Township had its first home birth in about 50 years, something like that. So it's not every day you have a home birth in Chatham Township, and certainly was something new. I don't know if Greg, you want to comment?
Intentionally?
I found out about it because one of our police officers was able to assist with it. Unfortunately, I don't know much more than that.
Well, maybe we can get the police officer in here one day to commend him for his efforts as well. So good news on that front.
You know, I did just ask him yesterday because there was some question as to whether or not he actually delivered the baby. And I said, well, who's actually holding on to the baby while the feed came? He said, well, the father. So, well, technically, the father was the one who actually
Deliver the baby.
But
Chatham Township Finance was on hand to make sure
They were there.
there was no fumble.
Giving instructions. Yeah.
Very good. Next up is the Public Safety Committee met this week as well. We met with representatives from the Safe Routes to School. It was a productive meeting. Got some insight in terms of their safety concerns, insights in terms of their survey that they conducted last year. As I said, it's a productive meeting. We discussed the various sidewalk grants the Township Committee has been working on for the past several years, as well as the upcoming Pedestrian Safety Week that we're going to be launching sometime in the spring, early summer, in conjunction with the Board of Ed, so we can make it a community-wide event, not just at the Township, but in affiliation with the schools as well. Actually, I think it might be in the fall. We don't have a date for that yet. Not yet. But suffice to say, good conversation and more to come on that. So I encourage anyone who has any questions about public safety, of course, always to email us or call us here at the municipal building, or you can email the committee at chathamtownship-nj.gov. With that, turn over.
Mayor, before we move
Yes.
on, Chief, I think we were remiss at the last meeting. I believe we had a police officer who saved someone's life again. Do you recall in the police report? I read in the police report it was first on the scene, cardiac arrest, or is it not coming back to you? I apologize putting you on the spot. I think it was in the police report, and I can't remember what officer it was.
Kevin.
yes,
Yeah.
no, we have certain criteria
Okay.
fit the actual save. Yes, they were successful in reviving to the point where a heartbeat was restored, but unfortunately the patient passed away a short time later.
Very well. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Thank you, Mayor. Just some reports on some capital projects. The Wickham Woods Drainage Project is going well. The contractor did take off for the holidays, approximately 3 weeks, but he did start up again and probably has about 2 to 3 weeks left. Project is going smooth. We're on budget and don't anticipate any issues for the rest of the project. Have not received any complaints at all from the residents, so it's going very well. Colony Pool.
You disconnected your phone?
Yes. Colony Pool, the project's going slow. We've had some quality control issues with the contractor and had him correct his work a number of times before he actually poured the concrete. But he does anticipate completing the concrete work in February. We do monitor the weather, and he is following proper protocols for pouring concrete in the winter with adding various chemicals and providing blankets and such. And we actually are doing concrete testing on it to make sure that it does have the compressive strength when it's done, when it cures. Probably will not see a lot after he pours the next, once the wall is substantially done, because right now the soil is frozen. We don't want him doing any earthwork right now until we get some thaw. And so I really anticipate a little more activity in the beginning of February, and then maybe mid-March, really gearing up again, doing this, finishing up the site work and doing the backfilling, because we do want it to be done properly so we don't have any settlement issues. So we'll see a little bit of a lull there towards the end of February, beginning of March. On the consent agenda, there's two resolutions. One is for the award of the contract for the Chatham Heights lift station. That's a pump station that's located off of River Road. That contract involves a substantial amount of rehab work at that pump station. It involves replacing the generator, upgrading electrical, installing new pumps, and doing various site work. So it's a very substantial improvement to that pump station. And then also on the consent agenda is the award of a contract for electrical improvements. We've discussed this a number of times. This is the work related to the backup generator, the portable backup generator at the municipal building. This involves doing electrical improvements to actually make, instead of right now, the electrical connections were temporary, and these are going to make it permanent installation, and also supplying a portable storage tank that's going to increase the capacity of the generator to operate for a minimum of 48 hours, but that's at full capacity, and realistically it'll probably get 3 or 4 days out of that additional tank, because usually the generators don't run at full capacity. So that, again, is a FEMA grant that's paying for 100% of that project. Just some updates on the grants. The Safe Routes to School grant for Lafayette. The DOT recently gave us a form to fill out, and we should be getting that back to them shortly. The ball is still in their court, really, regarding securing their professionals to design the project and move forward. I really haven't gotten any feedback. I do periodically call and ask for an update, and so not seeing a lot of activity there, and I'm not sure why, but it is ultimately, I do follow up with them. We did submit 2 other federal grants in 2016. It's a TAP grant and then also the other Safe Routes to School grants. No word on when those announcements would be. I would suspect that they would probably be late spring would be the earliest, just knowing the time frame that they usually take. And then we have another grant that we submitted for resurfacing on Roberts and Dale and a portion of Dale and a portion of Spring. That was just recently submitted, and I'm not sure. They're completely off their cycle with because of the Transportation Trust that they had that stop period, and so I'm hoping that we get notice before the summer, so that perhaps we can implement that project this year. If it's awarded too late, it may be problematic, but we'll see. That's all I have there.
John, just for the record, the Safe Routes to School grant and the TAP grant you were talking about, one is for the sidewalk on the eastbound side of Shunpike, right? Between Pine and Falmouth.
And then the second, the TAP grant, was on Snake Hill.
Right. Thanks.
And John, you updated us on the status of the Lafayette sidewalk grant. Is that still a possibility for this summer, or are we slipped past that at this point?
I doubt it. And you know, I step back and you look at it. This was a grant that we submitted in 2014. And here we are, and we still haven't broken ground, and we don't even have our sights on starting the design of that project. But it's a federal grant. It's beyond our control it usually is a very slow process. I just completed 2 grants that were issued in 2014 because of all the paperwork involved, but it's disappointing that we just haven't even broke ground yet.
Does the grant application process that we're in now, can that be impacted by the one that we're still working towards applying? will they look at us with one grant saying, well, you've got this one that's been out there, it's been awarded, it's your money, we're not being able to put one foot in front of the other yet? Is that going to preclude us or
Can I
jeopardize
do
our
this one,
chances of?
if you don't mind? Can I interject? Now, when we met with them and had the field inspection, they gave us every indication that they were going to accelerate the process. They were very happy with the progress that we were making. For Lafayette, and that we were actually going to do it. Because one of the problems they were running into is that they were making these awards, and then towns were withdrawing and not doing the projects. So they were very pleased that we were actually going to go forward and do it, and they gave us every indication that another application would be looked upon favorably because they have a ton of money to give away and nobody wants it. So, I'm paraphrasing, but that was kind of what we walked away with.
Thank you.
Right?
Yes, and just to expand, they do have a rating system when they evaluate the roads, and one of the criteria is can you implement your grant programs, and do you go complete your projects? And we have an excellent history on the municipal aid. For the federal, if the was completely in our court, and they weren't so involved, primarily because of the supplemental grant to do the engineering design of the project. If they did not offer that grant, we would have this project done last year. There's no question about it. It would have been designed, built, and done. What's been delaying this is basically securing that professional through the DOT to move forward and do the design. And we're not alone, I could say that. Is that I have had some discussions with the Society of Municipal Engineers, and it seems like this is other towns have complained, and so they set up this program to try to expedite getting the projects done, and it really hasn't. It actually delayed many projects. So it is great that we're getting additional funds to cover the design, but the downside is that it's just taking a long time to go through that process.
John, what's the total length of sidewalks of all these three grants? Do you know offhand?
Not offhand, I'd be guessing they're about 1,000 feet each. Maybe.
Pretty significant.
They're about 1,000 feet each.
Great, okay. Thank you. Chief? Good? All right. Tom?
Yes, Mayor, I have a couple of things. One, the first one, you may or may not know that we have run a summer program during the month of July at the Southern Boulevard School for a number of years. It's gone by, people refer to it as the Southern Boulevard Camp or the SBS Camp. It's been called Summer Playground, and it is a half-day program that we run from 9 to 12, Monday through Friday, basically during the month of July. It is a holdover program that was independent of the joint recreation program that we created with the borough. So it was something that we continued to maintain and control and manage and run ourselves. At one point in time, the borough also had a similar program. They discontinued theirs many years ago, and we pretty much inherited the borough kids into our program as well. Over the course of the last several years, the program has become less and less sustainable. We did increase fees slightly last year. It was still, I think, a tremendous bargain. But what we saw for 2016 was enrollment was down to 116 campers, or 116 kids. We hire over 30 counselors and 2 adult leaders, a teacher to manage the program and a college student to assist. As a result of the declining participation, and as an example, I think 5 years ago, we had over 300 kids. So to drop down to 116 really hurt us. We lost in excess of $6,000 last year, and we've been running similar losses in prior years. That doesn't have a direct impact on the budget because we run it through the Recreation Trust Fund, so the program is intended to be self-sufficient, that the fees that families would pay to participate would cover the costs, and they no longer do. So we've been subsidizing out of our trust fund. given the numbers, that the decline to 116 campers in 2016, we only served about 80 families, about half of those township families. So, you know, this is a program that I don't think is worth continuing. I can tell you that it took a lot of effort on my part, took a lot of effort on the part of the supervisors to organize it, to hire these kids, to get everybody's paperwork together, to order arts and crafts supplies and T-shirts and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think that this is worth continuing. And unless you tell me otherwise, I'm going to pull the plug and, you know, make a public announcement that we're going to discontinue this program.
Is there any reason to expect that last year's enrollment was an anomaly?
I don't think so. There's no evidence of that. It's just, you know, it's been kind of, it's been dwindling. It dropped and went back up a little bit, but then it dropped again. But as I said, 5 years ago we were at 300.
Yeah.
I think 3 years ago we were at 150. So I think part of what's gone on is that there's some privately run camps that are in direct competition with us. One in particular that operates out of another one of the elementary schools and is run, I guess the person that runs it is a school teacher in the system. And he kind of operates all year. He does birthday parties and things like that. And I think he's gotten to be very well known in the community. And, you know, people go to the birthday parties and the next thing you know, they're signing up for his summer camp. So I don't think it's a service that is much in demand, so I don't really see anybody getting hurt by this. You know, the 40 township families that used it last year, I'm sure can find accommodation elsewhere if they're looking for it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I personally have to agree with the fact of just being good fiscal stewards of taxpayer dollars. This is probably not. Sometimes you got to fish or cut bait, and I think it might be time to cut bait. You'll want to offer programs, but if it's not sustainable, one, it's not helpful, but two, if you don't even have a mass interest in a program like this, I don't know that it's worth continuing. And to your point, we have seen increase in other camps in town and surrounding towns. I know a number of family friends or whatever who kids have gone off to other camps as well. So it just seems the attraction is somewhere else at this point.
The bigger attraction, the thing that families are more interested in is in placing their kids with their first summer job. It's really become more that than the camp. It's that opportunity for those 30 to 35 kids, you know, to work a few hours a day, you know, for a month and make themselves a couple $100. So that's where the interest really is. But again, you know, I don't know that that's a business that we need to be in.
Mm-hmm. When do the camp typically run?
Pardon me?
From 9 to 1?
9 to 12.
9 to
It's from
12.
9 to 12. It's 3 hours. And starts usually right after school lets out. I think last year we might have had a week in between when school let out and when we started the camp. But it typically runs like 5 weeks.
Okay.
Is the Joint Recreation Committee aware of the situation? Should we?
The joint, again, this wasn't a joint program.
I understand that this is separate.
Strictly us. No,
I'm
no.
just thinking that if it leaves a void, is it a good procedure to let them know ahead of time and see if they are thinking along any lines that they want to pick up some slack or redefine it from their
Well, they're
end
only an
somehow?
advisory board, so I mean they don't run programs either. We run them. So I don't know what they could do to turn it around, frankly.
I guess I accept that it's in its present format. It's just not sustainable. Just thinking that if there's any benefit in letting them know as our recreation advisors that this is our intent, and that if they want to discuss it with the staff and see if there's an unmet need that.
What staff, Mike? I met.
It's all
Well,
it's all
our
the
director.
It's all the club programs.
We don't have a
The only
recreation director.
members-
Chatham Township's representative is talking to you. It's me. I run it.
But the members who really make up the recreation committee are all the club programs. So the club programs are running the recreation programs from top to bottom. The soccer club runs soccer, and lacrosse, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, outside of that realm of their specificity, I don't think, you know, it's going to make a difference to them.
They don't have a camp committee down at the
No,
borough.
there is no staff to take this over.
Very good.
Okay, so if we're done with that subject, the other thing I wanted to run by you is my proposal for budget schedule. Because our this meeting schedule got changed, that we're meeting the first and third instead of the second and fourth, that kind of throws off the traditional budget cycle. And what I would like to propose is that at the meeting of the 16th, when we would normally be introducing the budget, that we still go ahead and do that. That I would do a presentation that night before you would distribute to you ahead of time a draft budget that would be, presented formally on the 16th for introduction, and get back on schedule to go ahead and do that, with the public hearing then scheduled for the second meeting in March, which will probably be the 23rd. Okay, and that again would be contingent on the governor doing his budget and us knowing what the state aid figures are. But I will have all of our revenue figures. The audit team is here this week working with us to finalize the annual financial statement. That should be available at the beginning of next week, and with that we'll have certification on how much fund balance we have, and all the certification of what the actual collections were on all the other revenues in 2016, and we can go ahead and get it finalized. So the finance committee this year, I think, is Mr. Kelly and Mr. Ritter.
Yep.
So I will attempt to get together with you guys either by telephone or by sending you the very preliminary as soon as I have a first draft completed, and take any feedback that you have, and then we would look to follow that schedule that I just suggested, doing the presentation the night of the 16th, hopefully followed by a vote to introduce if you're all happy with it, which I'm sure you will be.
Great. And to that end, I would encourage members of the press here to write about that and remind folks that we'll be talking about this at the next meeting, and certainly to come in here, learn more about how their tax dollars are being spent. We always encourage people to
And
come
also
out
how
and-
the budget is put together.
Yes, exactly. Because there's been some confusion in the past years from some individuals, and we want to make sure people know what's going on.
It's all out there.
Yep.
They can
Okay.
tune in live.
That's all I got.
Great. Thank you, Tom. We'll now open up for a hearing of citizens. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled for public hearing tonight. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit time for all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes.
May I?
Yes, of course. State your name and address, please.
My name is George Stafford. Want my address? Everybody asks for my address. This is what I do going to council meetings. I live at 16 Kitchell Avenue in Wharton, New Jersey, and I've been here before. I represent the New Jersey Highlands Coalition, and I have been asking you for a while about our resolution to support the Highlands Act, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here about water issues, the drought that we have had that's improved a little bit, but we are still in, has brought a number of things to light, and a lot of questions have come up. So we're working with an outfit called Keep It Green, which is an open space group across the state to have 2 resolutions considered by governing bodies, and I have copies of those here. But I need to set the stage first that we haven't had a published New Jersey water plan. That is to say, how much water we have, where it's being used, et cetera, since 1996. Now, a number of things have happened since 1996. This thing is supposed to come out every 5 years. One was actually done in 2011, but it's never been published. I'll get to that in a minute. Since 1996, we have 1 million more people in the state. We are far and away the most densely populated state in the country. Delaware's number 2, and we have 20% more people per square mile than Rhode Island does. We have been getting a little bit more rain than the 20 years since 1996, than the 20 years before, but we've lost almost 250,000 acres in open space. And what those 250,000 acres were doing, and the open space that we still have, is recharging groundwater. And when we came to that point in July, August, September, October of this year, groundwater was what we were relying upon, because we get 50 inches of rain in New Jersey annually. Seattle gets 37. We have a lot of people in a very small space, and we're literally drinking the water that falls out of the sky. Because of our infrastructure, and you guys were taught, well, I don't know whether it was a water line or not, but because of our infrastructure, it's estimated that we lose 25% of the treated water that we have that we're sending out. So as the population continues to grow, as we have a density of population along our transit lines, and we're dealing with bigger buildings and places that use water for air conditioning, the beautiful waterfront and Hudson River. When I was a kid, that would look like a devastated area, and now it's the Gold Coast, and it's not just Hoboken and Jersey City anymore. It's running up and down. They use a tremendous amount of water, and the infrastructure underneath is still the devastated infrastructure from the 50s with the nice pretty buildings on top. So we have a water crisis. And the two things that we would ask you to consider, these two resolutions, is one is an increase, and I see you're going to be discussing your open space tax later on, but an increase from the state for open space funds, because the more we neglect it, the more runoff we get, which causes flooding problems, and the less groundwater recharge we get. And we need to keep the groundwater recharge. So we need to have more open space. And it would also include our resolution calls for a payment in lieu of taxes. That gets to be a problem with some communities when we're talking about open space. You lose a rateable, you had maybe a farm or an old golf course, or you have something, and now you don't have any rateable at all. This would be payments that would be scaled down over a 5 or 6 year period to take the sting out of that, so it's not 1 minute you got taxes and the next year you don't have any, you have a hole in your tax base. So that's something we would request. We would also request, because we don't know, to have that 2011 New Jersey Water Plan made public, so we know where we are, so we know what we're doing. We're building, our population is growing. It's not growing as fast as other places in the country, but we don't have that much more room to fill. If you're out in Colorado or California, you got all kinds of elbow room. We don't have that. So those are the two resolutions we would ask you to consider, and I have copies here, and I'll send your clerk a Word copy via email. We've done that before. Perfect. So we'd ask you to consider that. It's a critical problem. The state we can't have the economy we have in the state of New Jersey if we don't have the water that we need. And so that's the reason we ask you for this. So unless you have any questions, I think I ran over my 3 minutes by a couple of seconds anyway.
Any questions for George?
Thank you.
Thank you, George.
I appreciate your time, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else like to come forward? All right, hearing no other folks have an interest coming forward, we'll close the hearing of citizens. Moving on to an introduction of ordinance 2017-03, colony pool fees. This is an ordinance of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey, establishing pool membership fees for Colony Recreation Center commencing in 2017. Anyone have any questions on this? This is an annual ordinance establishing fees for the summer. Tom, if you want to opine on anything?
Mayor, just to generally state that in general, it's about a 5% increase. We did eliminate...
Sorry, Tom, what's the percentage on it?
About 5%, Mike. If you look at the family, Chatham Township family rate of $475, last year it was $450. So individual goes from $225 to $235. Senior citizen stays at $50. Senior citizen couple went from $75 to $80. The babysitter goes to $145 from $125. Non-resident rates, family goes to $675 from $625. Individual goes from $255 to $300. Senior citizen goes from $75 to $100. Senior citizen couple goes from $100 to $150. So obviously those are more than 5%, but they're still pretty low. Babysitter goes from $140 to $175, and the daily guest goes from $8 to $850. We did, in this version, eliminate the parent and child. That was a new thing that we created just last year, or maybe the year kind of found a loophole in our system, and they were signing up for the discounted rate of the single parent and child, and then the second parent was showing up on the weekend and paying the guest fee. So my recommendation is for us to eliminate that and just stick with the traditional family and individual and senior membership categories.
Very good.
Thank you.
And I would just remind folks that, Colony Pool Club over the past several years has seen, I think, an increase in membership due to our marketing efforts, due to our increased social activities, increased amenities. The Colony Pool Club, I think, is the envy of many municipalities in terms of community pools. And I know that we are pooling from other area pools and other ones. Other pains for other municipalities certainly is our game, but I think it's reflective of the fact that we do have a great pool, great summer family fun, and these fees, while maybe an increase, I think is still considerably lower than other area pools. And I said, I think it's a great place to hang out for the summer, and everything from, teen events to adult luau and pig roast to summer music on Sundays and stuff. It's just a great event, great activities as well. So.
Okay, so
How many non-resident families or non-resident participants do we have as a percentage? Is it 10%?
No,
no,
it's about 40%.
About 40% non-resident.
40%.
Yeah, with the majority of them coming from the borough, but we do also draw from, Florham Park and Madison, but mostly, majority of the 40% are borough people.
Right. Do you think that the larger increases for non-residents is going to impact that in any way?
Maybe, but, frankly, notwithstanding the fact that we're increasing the fees, we continue to spend significant amount of taxpayers' dollars to make improvements because we do see the facility as an amenity for our citizens and as a quality of life issue. So we are subsidizing this operation. We just killed the camp because it's not sustainable, but we do also subsidize Colony out of tax dollars. So frankly, if non-residents are asked to pay a little bit more, I think that's fair.
Great. Thank you.
Do we know how these rates stack up against the rates at community pools in surrounding towns?
We're below them,
This would still leave us below.
yeah.
And considering what you get in the facility itself, it's a home run.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to introduce this ordinance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.
Public hearing on February 16th.
Moving on, we've got two other ordinances here for final adoption. Do we open up for hearing first, or we introduce them first? Okay. Would anyone like to come forward to speak on these two ordinances? The first one is Ordinance 2017-01, Cap Bank Ordinance. The second is Ordinance 2017-02, Liquor License Fee Amendment. See no public coming forward. Do I have a motion to approve the first ordinance, 2017-01?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Next up is Ordinance 2017-02. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. Next up is our consent agenda. Greg, would you mind reading the resolutions, please?
Yes, this evening we have Resolution 2017-46, approving meeting minutes, 2017-47, awarding contract for Chatham Heights Lift Station Project, 2017-48, authorizing submission of recycling tonnage grant application, 2017-49, awarding contract for electrical improvements project, 2017-50, appointing Board of Health member, and 2017-51, appointing Planning Board alternate member.
Thank you, Greg. Any discussion items on the consent agenda?
Mayor, can I suggest that you name who those individuals are?
Sure. We have it here. For the Board of Health. Do you have it in front of you, Greg? Christine Chang. And for Planning Board, we have Craig Crowick. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Schwartz?
Yes.
Mayor Ritter?
Yes. We have two items for discussion this evening. The first is the moratorium on road opening permits. I don't know if, John, if you want to opine on this. This is something I'd seen out of Westfield and thought it might be something we might consider implementing in our town.
Yeah, absolutely. I reviewed our ordinance for street and sidewalks, where we have we do have an existing permit process for excavation within the roads. And reviewing the ordinance, certainly we can improve upon various areas, one being putting a moratorium, which is not uncommon, for a minimum of 5 years. And within the ordinance, it would be a contingency. If there is a hardship, we would evaluate that a hardship, and if in fact someone has to open the road up within that 5-year period, we can impose some additional restoration measures to bring the road back whole again. One technique is infrared technology, where once they open the road, they put the final paving down, and then they heat it up so that they heat the entire mat up so it just becomes uniform again, so you can't even see seams. It's not a very expensive process, but it does add to the cost, but it's appropriate for when you're opening up the road within that 5-year period. Other things we could add, typically we would restrict final paving within the roadways between November and April, and again, opening up to, if we're having a mild winter, obviously we would allow people to do the work, but if when the weather conditions aren't appropriate, we have an ordinance to tell them to stop. You can't do the work. And, it would also just improve some of the quality control that we have during the excavation of the road, making sure that they compact the soils properly so we don't have any settlement. Imposed a process that's very common, and even we do it when we have road projects, is that we would apply a temporary pavement, and then we would allow that pavement some time to settle, and then we come in and we mill and do a final paving. And I did about 5 years ago, I made modifications to an ordinance in Chatham, and in Denville, and there was drastic improvements on the what we saw with especially with the utility companies, the gas and water, when they're excavating the road. We just see those improvements. If you drive around some of the older roads, and you can see where that utility trench was, where that excavation was, and if it was done better quality control, you won't see that as much.
So if we were to introduce such an ordinance, or a resolution, I guess, or ordinance, would it basically be an ordinance? You think we'd see considerable improvement in the roads in town? And I mean, that's kind of the purpose of this.
Yeah, the purpose, absolutely. We would have better control on excavation within the road, and ultimately we're looking at, if we're doing the improvements of the road, we want those roads to extend that service life of the road as far as possible. We pave a road, we don't want a utility company coming in 10 years, and all of a sudden our projection is a 20-year projection, and now that projection is reduced because they've opened the road and allowed, once the road is opened up, you get the rate of deterioration increases, and so we want to control that. We want to maintain the quality of the roads.
Are there any pitfalls or potholes, pardon the pun, that we should be concerned about in doing something like this, or?
No, the ordinance is not intended to regulate. It's intended to focus on opening up the paved portion of the road. We're not over-regulating in the right-of-way. We're not going to regulate mailboxes or landscaping and things of that sort. It just is really just focusing on the road itself.
John, aren't we doing this already? I mean, we had a situation with fire hydrant replacement or leak or whatever, and they did come in and do that infrared sealing I guess we asked them to do it, but
That's the difference, is it's a matter of,
It's
we can certainly
voluntary.
ask, and even in Buxton, we negotiated with the water company, but necessarily we shouldn't.
so we're not
negotiate.
doing this, we're not getting this kind of service if we just ask them all the time, or this isn't a upfront, well, we expect you to, if you're going to open up our roads, this is what we expect of you. We're not presently doing that and have this expectation without this ordinance?
Not to the extent that we don't have very extensive construction requirements in our ordinance. It is very relaxed. And the utility companies, I must say, they don't take advantage of us. They do do some minimum improvements beyond the ordinance, but we're not regulating it, and we could do better.
This kind of establishes a playbook. This kind of establishes a playbook for
Correct.
folks.
Correct.
And the utility companies are certainly better than individual builders who are, opening the road for water or sewer connections. Those are, some of the trenches that we have some issues with, natural gas, but
So does this
typically.
apply? Would this apply to that?
This would apply to anybody that opens the road, yeah. If you get a road opening permit, you got to put the road back the way you found it. One of the reasons I think that the timing is right here is that we are, continuing to try to move forward with our road repair and repaving. And in fact, we're going to recommend some acceleration of that and ask for additional money this year because we need to start working on some large areas like Rolling Hill. We've held back because of the amount of construction and damage to the road during construction. And now, if we're going to go in and pave it, we want to make sure that as these reconstructions happen, that the road is not going to get wrecked.
In the article that I read about the Westfield ordinance, they had a fine schedule or a fee schedule or something like that if the road was 5 years or 1 year done. It was $1,000 extra for them to come in and open the road, and from 2 to 3 years it was $750. Am I coming up with that correctly? If the road was newly paved, it was going to cost them an extra $1,000 to come in and do work, whoever it was, whether a utility or a builder?
Yeah, I don't recall seeing that in the ordinance. I don't know if I downloaded Westfield. I downloaded it was the one that recently, Mayor, that you, it was in your email.
I thought it was Westfield.
That was Westfield?
Yeah.
Because I downloaded
Well, is
I guess the
that,
fees, though, or the whatever, would be determined upon ourselves.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a possible thing? Is that a correct thing to consider when putting the ordinance in place, that if you're going to come in and start doing road work where we just paved it, it's going to cost you an extra $1,000 if the road was paved within the last year, $750 within the last 2 to 3 or 2 to 4 years, $500 if it was paved 5 years ago?
I did download Westfield's ordinance off their website, and maybe they just haven't published, maybe they've changed it, but the one that was on their website, they don't have that sliding scale.
Right.
And I guess we could just discuss what's the advantage of having that sliding scale, to discourage people, or just...
Or
because
to make them
ultimately-
think twice before they go and
Yeah.
do random work that might
Because
not need to be done.
But if the ordinance already says you've got to put it back the way you found it,
Right.
regardless of what kind of additional fee you put on top of it, they're going to think twice.
So what is the is the ordinance a fee up front, or is an ordinance an expectation of how you have to handle road openings and how you have to leave them, improve them back to the standards that we expect when they're done? And if you don't, then you get hit with a potential fine, or are we talking about a fee up front?
You can talk about an application fee up front. If the application is large enough, it requires them to post escrow, so I'm not reviewing, I can review the plan in some more detail. And it does have the performance bonds, being more specific on what the performance bond requirements are. So they have 3 fees that they have, possibly 2. If it's a small opening, we don't charge for the escrow. If if it's a small opening, many times, like even with we have fees associated with the lock rating, or reviewing it as that, so we don't have to double up on the fees. But so I did draft some changes to the ordinance, and certainly the committee could look more closely at what those changes are, and certainly those.
Excuse me, John, could you just move the mic a little
Will do, will do.
I guess the question is when an individual does the lot, right, the individual is taking on that responsibility. They're paying the permits for the work they're doing, for the work that you're doing, the oversight. In this case, a utility comes in, depending on the fee structure, we all end up paying the fee. So I just, I don't know what that permit fee is going to look like and the extent of it, but oftentimes people think that's a windfall, but it winds up back in your bill somewhere.
Sure, like the gas company, they're regulated by the BPU. They can't turn around and their rate fees are judged based on them. So yeah, I guess in the long run, possibly when they go back to the BPU to amend their user fees, they'll look at the cost of things. But it's either, the intent here is that you're either going to pay now and get the road right, or pay later because the road's going to fail prematurely. So the intent is to make sure.
No, I think the intent is good. I mean, I'm all for it. I just.
What are the unintended
The issue
consequences?
of, what is that permit? Because oftentimes you can make permits so onerous that,
Well, the
it
builder's
discourages
just gonna pass it
things
along.
from getting done.
For a tear down rebuild, it's developer that's picking it up as part of his cost of doing
Sure.
business and
Right.
doing.
What do we currently require? Can you
We just
do it?
require a $25 permit. And
That's it?
I don't think that's going to break the bank.
And no performance bond, so what mechanism do we have if they do a lousy repair job? None?
Not much. We can issue summonses.
So
that's
I mean,
why
but,
you need
but
to
New
do-
Jersey American Water running a pipeline all the way down Southern Boulevard to Lafayette. I mean, that would be a significant. Would this be a permit? Would there be some metrics to it? The permit fee would be larger based on the scale of the project.
Yes. Yeah, we would, the performance bond would be based on the scale of the project, and the ordinance would be specifically so many dollars per square yard is what your performance bond is going to be. So if you have a very large project, it's just, unit price. The escrow, we charge a deposit in escrow to do spot inspections, because even with the gas company, I've done, in Denville, it's more of a gas company versus the water, but making sure that they cut the trench and they saw cut a clean edge, and make sure that when they're excavating, their excavation didn't go underneath the pavement and you're creating pockets, and that's been very common, is that they try to make the trench as narrow as possible, and you'll see that around town. The trench is really, well, you can't really, it has to be a minimum of 2 feet in order to get the compaction equipment in there, and so that we make sure that there's a minimum cut that they do, and then if they undermine the pavement as part of the excavation, we make them cut out more of the road so that they can properly compact where they undermine the pavement, and we just make sure that the compaction is done right, and then we just make sure that when they're putting the pavement back, that they're putting the correct thickness back, and usually we put down back 6 inches, and that 6 inches should be done in 2 lifts, but a lot of people just do it in 1. And so we just make sure that the pavement goes back properly and that it's just restored properly. And the benefit is that it will be far less noticeable, and the roads will not deteriorate as the way they are, where you start to get settlement. Once you have settlement, that's the water's penetrating it. You'll start to get the edges breaking up right away, and it just promulgates away from these utility trenches.
Very good. Thank you.
Do we anticipate that the utilities will be more proactive in finding out what's going on around our town before they end up?
Well, the utility, if we pass the ordinance, I would forward it to the main utilities.
Right.
And just let them know.
And how would that
They're not gonna
impact
be surprised.
Lafayette and the pending, this ordinance, if we were to introduce it next meeting, it's 2 meetings, they're already going to break ground.
Well, that road has 5 years, it's been paved outside 5 years now, so.
They may be exempt because we're probably already issued the permit.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
old permit, so they'll be, grandfathered in under the old act.
But we'll expect them to do the same.
Well, and additionally, now how about if the gas company does have to come in, if the entire one side of Lafayette Avenue has been resurfaced per New Jersey American Water, and what if the gas company has to come in and now do something?
Permits in place, we'll hold them accountable
To the standards of the new ordinance.
Correct.
Right,
Anybody have any other questions?
no, that's great, I think it's a
Interested
good idea.
introducing?
Yeah.
All right, John, you want to?
Okay, yeah, I'll
Pen
work
and
with
paper
Tom
and-
and just fine tune anything and then.
Please. Yes.
To introduce it.
Yep. All right. Next item for discussion is the open space tax.
This is our annual review of where you want to be with the open space tax as part of the budget process. If you recall, we still have that, I refer to it as poison pill language, that the open space tax is set at 2 cents, but each year you have the option of reducing it, and you've been reducing it to a half a cent, but there's language that says if you don't take action, it automatically reverts to 2 cents. So my suggestion is that instead of going through this every year, if you can come to some consensus, if you're going to leave it at a half a cent for 2017, remove that language so that if in 2018 you're going to leave it alone, you don't have to do this again, and in 19 and 20 and on down the road. So that's all. I don't have a particular recommendation on what the fee or what the rate should be. That's completely your prerogative. I don't think conditions have changed any. The half a cent will generate almost $160,000 a year. That's sufficient to pay the debt service that is related to the open space purchases, but not much beyond that. So in the event that a opportunity for a purchase came up, there would not be a pot of money sitting there. You would have to do an authorization and borrow money to authorize a purchase. So it's really just a matter of you guys deciding if you want to leave it at a half a cent, and if so, then we need to introduce the ordinance to make that happen.
I think as liaison from the Open Space Committee, I probably would want to bring back their input. And I think they, number one, feel very strongly that the mechanism that we have in place now is a good one to revisit it every year. That situations do change, and it's a good thing for each new township committee to look at it and not have it done once and then kind of be forgotten and gather dust. Beyond that, they also do feel that it should be more than a half cent. They feel that we've had 3 referendums over the past 12 years or so, and all 3 have easily passed with the public voting in favor of the full 2%, I think, in each time. Was it, Tom? Do I have that accurate? Was it?
I think the question was always 2 cents. I don't think there wasn't a multiple choice. It was 2 cents or nothing.
Yeah. So I guess what it comes down to is what's the upside of having it. And I think that, we have found ourselves talking about some open space acquisition questions in executive session this past year. And it seems like it's a pretty fluid issue at the moment with the opportunities out there, and just the circumstances have to be right and for us to want to make a decision to act. There's definitely the feeling on the part of the Open Space Committee that having money in an open space trust fund would be a plus in going out for matching Green Acres funds, that they would feel that it increases the chances of a positive feedback from them. That if we're ready to put some money where our mouth is in terms of having the Green Acres Trust Fund, the Open Space Trust Fund. Whether it's the full 2 cents or whether there's a number in between there that makes more sense, I think that that's certainly an open issue for us to think about and talk about. But I think the voters have clearly sent us a signal that they're behind it, and I think with the subject being on there, I think that that we are often put in the position that when the operating budget comes before us, our administration has done an excellent job in terms of keeping that tax flat. I think that's a great testament to our operating levels. I think this is a totally separate issue. I think it deserves a totally separate look at it from us, that it's going to appear on a tax bill as the tax for the municipalities tax will, again, last couple of years has been the way it's been and nicely under control. the open space appears as a separate line item. And, I think under the circumstances, I would support the recommendation of the Open Space Committee that it's time to get it up above the half a cent, which really just goes to covering the carrying costs of previous bond issues.
If we were to bump it to a cent or whatever the case, what would be the average impact to a resident in town, do you know?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I can tell you that a penny on the tax rate will generate about $315,000. If depending on what the average assessment is this year, what a half a cent means to the average homeowner. If you want to give me a few minutes, I can go figure that out for you.
Sure.
What is the average homeowner now?
The average assessment last year was about $780.
Any other thoughts?
I'll weigh in with some thoughts, and my thoughts are that we live in the worst tax state in the country, only bordered by two other of the worst tax states, not bordered, but certainly New York and Connecticut. We are overtaxed in every way, shape, and form in the state of New Jersey. The only good thing we had going for the state of New Jersey was the gas tax, and the legislature, in their infinite wisdom, raised that to where we are now the seventh worst gas tax in the country. So I certainly am a fan and appreciate open space. I value it, and we're actually going to discuss it tonight in executive session. What I find interesting with the open space tax is we send a lot of money to Morris County in taxes, and we send open space tax dollars there, which there seems to be a fair amount there. We send money to the state in a variety of different ways, and the state just passed the corporate tax, which will certainly regenerate open space at the Green Acres level on the state front. So much of our money, indirectly, or sometimes directly, sometimes indirectly, is finding its way into open space. We're fortunate here in the township where we, as Tom said, if we find something that's reasonable, we can, and we think is of value, that we can bond for it to any reasonable extent to purchase it with existing tax dollars. The minute you put your money into open space, it gets very narrow and defined in what you can do with that money. So in essence, you're taking tax dollars from the Chatham Township residents, and you are setting it aside for what may or may not be. And it loses its availability to be used for other things, such as roads, as we're discussing tonight, or other issues. So I find the open space tax at the town level interesting, and yes, it was voted upon, but yes, the voters, I think, appreciate what we've done in the open space front. I have certainly appreciated the work of the Open Space Committee and Joe Bosralian, all the work that he has done for the Open Space Committee. It's really, really wonderful. I'm a supporter of open space, but I'm also a supporter of holding the fiscal line as much as we can, and to be as conscious and aware, because as the Deputy Mayor said, what is the average resident these days? And if you take out a certain portion of the town, that number goes from 700 to 900, but it might also go down to 250, 350,000, depending on where you're looking. So what is the average taxpayer? It's hard to say. I think we should just be mindful. Anytime we come into this body, I think we should be arguing, why are we raising taxes, not why should we lower them? So we've lowered it from 2, we've kept it at a half, it's worked for us. I would argue that we should keep it there. I would even say we should make it so we have to come in and not forget about it, but have the discussion every year about the open space tax. But certainly I would be more in favor of this body having to argue why we should raise a tax, not why we should lower
Karen, go ahead.
First of all, I echo what Kevin says. The last time we discussed this and the first time we discussed it in my tenure here, I thought I made it abundantly clear that I am loath to raise taxes at any stage of our discussions unless it's something that's really necessary. I know that when we talk about the debt that we as a township carry, in terms of what we are allowed to carry prudently, we have a minuscule amount of township debt. When we look at the current state of our open space tax revenue, we're talking about something less than $160,000 per year, which is enough to service the debt that we do have in the name of open space. In the event that a potential purchase came along, I think that we have some pretty great minds that we can tap into, some creative financing that we can tap into. We hear from the county that there are dollars out there for us to apply for in terms of grants. We hear that from Green Acres, we hear it from the state, we hear it from all over, that when a purchase opportunity presents itself, there is money out there, which isn't to say that we would have to prostrate ourselves before every body asking for money, but we do have all those opportunities. We have opportunities in terms of monies that are available to us as a township as it stands. If we did choose to borrow in order to make a purchase, and we did choose to raise the open space tax as a result of perhaps having to come up with another $160,000 to service a new purchase, well, we'll have that opportunity to have this discussion at a later time. But for the year ahead, I'm not in favor of raising the open space tax. I'm in favor of leaving it at a half a cent where it is to serve our needs. And knowing that we have the opportunity to discuss it on a regular basis, I think is a very productive thing. It's a good exercise that we have here. So that's my thought.
Thank you. I'll just offer my 2 cents as well, or maybe 1 cent.
Maybe a half a cent.
We'll see, as it were. No, I mean, no one's in favor of always raising taxes regardless of the situation. But I think over the past year, as Mike has discussed, as Joe has discussed with us, there have been discussions about various opportunities for open space acquisitions potentially in the township itself. And, you know, Tom just did the back of the envelope calculation, and the average, you know, resident would probably have to spend $40 a year, right, additional for taxes, for the open space tax if it were to increase to 1 cent, which is the equivalent to a family of 4 going to movies, right? So I think,
Unless you're going 6 on a movie.
yeah, so you're going to the Chatham Theater. No, but I think it's important, you know, if we are considering these potential purchases in the future here, to have some skin in the game. And I know when we acquired Giralda Farms, we had skin in the game. We brought money to the table.
Not a lot.
But we had some money on the table. Whereas in this case, you know, our balance for open space is going to paying for debt. So I would be a proponent. I would not be in favor of going 2 cents, but I would split the difference and increasing it to a penny. I'd be in favor of that.
And we would do what with that, Tom? Pay down the debt faster?
Well, if we have additional
Well, I mean,
purchases,
what do we do with it?
if we have additional purchases, we'll have something to show that we've got more skin in the game to make these purchases.
Yeah, initially, what you would be doing is building up a balance in the open space trust account to be used as you see fit according to what the ordinance allows, whether that's maintenance and development of open spaces or purchase of new properties. I can tell you that at least, you know, my long-term look into the future is that eventually you're going to run out of properties that you can even purchase. So there may come a point in time when the open space tax becomes obsolete because there's just nothing left to buy. And I personally think we're pretty close to that now. There's a couple of things that are, you know, on the table for discussion. I don't know whether, you know, where you guys are going to go with them, but, you know, if you look beyond the ones you're currently looking at, what else is there? So, you know, I don't know that you necessarily want to start creating a large fund here. To go to 1 cent, I think, is a modest increase. That's going to then generate, instead of in excess of 150,000 or so, for however long you leave that there. But you're going to be revisiting this again, obviously.
Right. As things stand, if you drive around town and you look at parcels of land and things that the township could benefit by purchasing, I'm going to say that we are not in jeopardy of missing any of those purchases because of lack of funding. I'm going to go out there and say, if we went out there and picked a parcel of land that the township would generally benefit from, that the residents of our town would be able to enjoy or at least look towards to being saved in perpetuity, that we would not miss an opportunity to make that purchase because of a lack of financing. Am I correct? I'm not talking about another $10 million.
No, it's not a lack of financing, but it's in order when you're trying to get grants for it. I think you've got a better story to tell when you say, we're coming to the table with funds to put into this, rather, can you pay it all? And then just going out.
I don't know about that, and I also don't know about what we're hearing from the various other government bodies with the money that they have. They never have once said, if you raise more money yourself, we'll throw more money towards you.
I mean, we're not the only municipality that has lowered this tax, in light of the fiscal situation most towns face, as even the county has lowered their open space tax. So I understand what you're saying, but I'm not so sure that that's as long as you have an open space tax in place that can go up or down on the sliding scale, as long as you have an effective master plan, an updated open space plan, circulation plan, all these things factor into the grants. So I think we have one. It's not like we don't have one, and I don't think we're doing anything different than other towns have done to manage their, manage their budgets. So I don't know. Does it help? Sure, probably helps. You have more, but I'm not sure how much it hurts.
Yeah, and we also do pay substantial into the county open space. What we'll do is for the 16th, we'll have an ordinance ready for you, and you'll see which number has 3 votes. Okay, since your 5th member is missing tonight, I don't know where he is. So we'll have the ordinance ready. You can fill in the blank if it's either a half a cent or a penny, depending on where the 3rd vote is. Is that a fair way to move forward?
Is there any other option?
Well, you could have a 2-2 deadlock and do nothing.
Or what do you do if it's 2-2? Just keep pushing until you get the 5th member?
2-2, it goes back to 2 cents. Because that's the way the
'cause the
ordinance
vote-
is currently
the vote
written.
is
If you
to-
don't reduce it, it goes to 2 cents.
You have to get the president of the Senate in here. Do the tiebreaker.
Yeah.
All right, very good.
Well, maybe you could have 2 budgets.
2 budgets. Tale of 2 townships.
We'll now open it up for a hearing of citizens. Again, this is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are not topics scheduled to be public hearing tonight. Anyone like to come forward? Please. Please come to the microphone, please.
Kathy Wilkes, 233 River Edge Drive, Chatham. What's the status of the potential development on the property on Hillside Avenue and River Road, and also on Southern Boulevard where the skate park is? And also, or any of those, are those 2 properties possibilities for open space?
The skate park property we already own. That's
you
already,
already own?
yeah, that's already owned by the township. The Aver property on River Road, the contract purchaser has made application to the township to consider rezoning the property. And that matter was referred by this governing body to the planning board, which is where it resides. The planning board is considering that request.
Okay, and those meetings are open to the public as
Yes,
well?
ma'am. Yes, they are.
Okay.
You can find them on our website.
Those are on Mondays. Which Mondays are they? 2nd and 4th? 1st and
They're
3rd?
typically 1st and 3rd. The meeting for the 6th was canceled because of President's Day. Presumably, the planning board might meet on the 27th of February, assuming that the documents are ready.
So 227 is the
That will be the next meeting, if,
of the planning board.
yeah, if the board is ready to meet to discuss that matter.
And are the agendas for those meetings
It will
online
be
as well? Drafts.
sometime before, usually like Thursday or Friday before it will get posted to the township website.
So that property on River Road has already been bought by that developer?
No, it's under contract.
Oh, it's under contract. So that's totally out of the realm of possible open space to be bought by the township?
Correct.
Yeah.
At the present time, that's correct.
And if you haven't already done so, you can sign up for the township website updates. So when the agendas do get posted, you'll get an email to let you know that the information's up there.
Okay, great.
Ms.
Thank
Wilkes,
you.
there are certain portions of that property that already are of the township. You know, certain portions
Right.
to the south of Hillside where that comes down there, and above Hillside, that's township property. So when you look at the entire open landscape as you're at your residence, perhaps and looking up to Fairmount to that hill, not all of that is going to be transferred all of that. Part of that is, in fact, already township property.
Right.
And, you know, the maps are available and so on, so
Right. Okay.
just so you know.
Okay.
We've always worked hard at making sure that parts of those properties stay within the township jurisdiction.
And Greg makes a good point in terms of the agendas are all on the website,
Right.
and you can sign up for alerts as well. So I encourage anyone at home watching or listening to the replay of this to do so as well.
Okay.
But thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Greg, you want to read the executive session? Yes. We'll close the hearing of citizens.
Okay, tonight's executive session resolution is as follows. Resolution 2017-P-02, resolution of the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, authorizing conference of the Township Committee with the public excluded. Whereas NJSA 10:4-12 of the Open Public Meetings Act permits the exclusion of the public from a meeting in certain circumstances, and whereas the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham is of the opinion that such circumstances presently exist, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Chatham, County of Morris, State of New Jersey as follows. The public shall be excluded from discussion of the specified subject matter. The general nature of the subject matter to be discussed is as follows. Litigation in the matter of the Township of Chatham for a judgment of compliance of its third round housing element and fair share plan, docket number MRS-L-1659-15, and B, open space. It is anticipated that the minutes on the subject matter of the executive session will be made public upon conclusion of the matter under discussion, and in any event, when appropriate pursuant to NJSA 10:4-7 and 4-13, the committee will come back into regular session and may take further action. This resolution shall take effect immediately.
You have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Kelly?
Yes.
Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Swartz?
Yes?
Mayor Ritter?
Yes.